bank. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Ayy, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast. Ayy, ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss. Ayy.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do, or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here. I'm going to bring him up in just a second. I got to drop this for my weekly reminder. We do have a newsletter. It drops every single Wednesday. No, I don't auto sign my contacts up for it. So if you want to get in on it, I need you to go to thefreightcoach.com, and it'll auto prompt you to do it. It's once a week. I don't even know who signed up for this. My team handles all of that. So I wouldn't even know how to give out anybody's information if you asked. But I know that it is just once a week. It's all market related, fuel prices, all of that. And we're going to be filtering in a lot more market data for you guys all to digest and utilize out there. And I'm going to be taking a spin on everything that, in my opinion, has not been done before and is not currently being done out there. So with that being said, let's jump in. I got my good friend Kevin Hill back on the show. Kevin, thank you so much for taking some time to join me today.
Anytime. It's always a pleasure sitting down with you, Chris. It's a fun show. I enjoy doing it, and I know we're going to have a great conversation.
Yeah, man, it's been 5, almost 6 years now, Kevin, since we originally met doing all of this stuff. And, it's wild, because it's as much as everything changes out there in the market and in everything else, it's also doesn't change as much as a lot of people want to think, right? Because I think and I've fallen victim to this too, man. I always think there's an easier way or a better way of doing things. And then I will always go back to the process, right? Because I talk about this so much, and I think some people think I'm just completely BSing them, but I literally run the exact same play and strategy in every single market that I come across, because fundamentally, when it boils down to it, your customer doesn't care about anything other than their freight picking up on time and delivering on time. There is no other way. It is as simple as that.
It really is. It's as simple as that. You can't worry too much about the market, what the market's doing, what anything else is doing. All you can do is control what you can control, and what you can control is the service that you give to your customer. And as long as you're doing that, bad market, good market, fantastic market, COVID market, recession market, you just have to grind through it, because it's a 30, 40-year-old game.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. And from my seat in particular, it's I don't care about, I would say 99% of what I read on social media and people's opinions on that, because I got everything on the line to make this work, right? I have to find a solution, and that's where my mindset constantly is there is a solution out there. I am going to find it. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer than it used to. It's going to be a lot harder than it maybe once was, but I'm addicted to the build, the hunt, I love that part of business. And I know plenty of individuals, Kevin, that have grown in this market downturn. They've grown exponentially during that time. So it's again, is it really as bad as it is out there? Or is it more about focusing in on your internal processes, procedures? How can you just get better internally to increase those, those outputs that you're doing?
Yeah, it's the same here. I know a lot of people have been growing. I know a lot of people have been hurt, but I know a lot of people have been growing, and basically they're narrowing down on their ICP, right? Their ideal customer profile. They're building their expertise in something that is much more narrow, and part of that is becoming better and creating excellence in how they serve their customers. Because you're not trying to chase everything. You're focusing on what you do well and you're doubling down on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. And so you guys are, over at Carrier Source. Like I am always going to be about, because I grew up as a carrier sales rep. First couple of years of my career, that's all I did. And I'm out there. I'm all about, and this is something that, and this is the strategy that we've implemented inside of my brokerage and we run with is we're all about that core carrier. I'm always about working with the same trucking companies time and time again, over and over again. And I personally think that is the only way. And there's a lot of great software that's out there, but that's the only tried and true method that is actually going to curb fraud inside of your organization is when you're working with a trusted carrier that you've booked hundreds of times before and you're utilizing that. But now, like, there's a lot of great software out there that elevates those right carriers that are like, hey, maybe you've never booked them before, but there is enough of a digital footprint now where you can be like, these guys are hands down more organized and above everybody else out there.
You're exactly right. And those brokers just that we're talking about growing with the downturn, they're leveraging great carrier relationships. They're building great carrier relationships. And whether you're sourcing it through Carrier Source, right? You're jumping on Carrier Source to find great carriers who have really good reviews. You're going to the Broker Carrier Summit and meeting new carriers, or at least new to you, face to face. But it's having those relationships and having that consistent. We talk about consistent customers, those consistent carriers who are doing a lot of business with you, repeat business. Keeps you insulated from fraud, right? I mean, that's if you know who you're dealing with, if you know who you're working with, if you know who your partners are, it's very hard for fraud to come into the system. If you're going out and doing one and done carriers on a consistent basis, or a super majority of the basis, then you're just opening yourself up for fraudulent activity.
Mm-hmm. I look at it as what you guys are doing at Carrier Source, because it's like there's only so much public information that's out there, Kevin, where it's, like, I think it's like 10% of the carriers even have a satisfactory rating that's out there. And it's like, again, what external tool, like what more can you do? And it's like, so from the data that you guys are looking at, what is it that's actually moving the needle for a carrier to get a higher rating on your guys' platform? And I want to take that angle first, because I think that a lot of the carriers out there, they do a really good job. I think most people would be pleasantly surprised at the amount of carriers that there are that just want to work hard and do the right thing, but they just want to be treated fairly. I know, shocking, but like, what can a carrier do to maybe stand out from the crowd to get more consistent business?
It's building building your online reputation, right? If you're a carrier out there, you don't have an online presence, that's really the first place everyone searches, right? So at Carrier Source, we have about 75,000 reviews, mostly on carriers. About 80% or more of those reviews are 5 stars and 4 stars, very positive, right? So you want to go out and just like any other business, if you're using Yelp or Google reviews, you want an industry specific tool, right, where you collect good reviews, right? You go to the doctor's office, you go to any local business, and they want you to write a review, right? Because it's all about that organic traffic coming in, people researching, right? So if you're a carrier out there, you want a lot of good reviews on Carrier Source, right? And that helps you out as part of a due diligence, whether it's a shipper or a broker coming in to inquire to hire you. You want to have that great online reputation.
What have you guys seen from like an organizational standpoint that a carrier could do? Is it like, navigating away from a Gmail account and getting their web domain and, going through G Suites and everything else? And I think that a lot of small business owners would be pleasantly surprised at how affordable it actually is. I think between my, I'll tell you guys the exact number on my P&L on what it costs. I use for my G Suites account, which is a couple of email addresses. It's $30 a month for that. And then for GoDaddy is like less than $20 a month for my hosting and everything. So it's like we're looking at $50 a month to have a digital footprint that is so much cleaner overall. Chris at thefreightcoach.com looks a lot better than thefreightcoach@gmail.com. You know what I mean? It just brings an extra layer of validity to your operation.
Yeah, you have the validity, and then you have, you know how easy it is to hack into to open Gmail accounts or free Gmail accounts, or to not even hack into them, but to mimic those, right? And I think that's where fraud really started was, it's the freight coach at gmail.com. I could do the freight coach and just throw in an extra, misspell the word freight, right? Change the I and the E around.
Yeah.
It's a whole new different email, right? And I could steal your identity just by doing that, right? I could hack into your system just like that. So it's been a few years since I was doing a lot of research on carrier lists and calling a lot of carriers and updated email addresses. But I was really super surprised by how many 50, 60, 70 truck fleets out there were still, as of 5 years ago, let's say 4 or 5 years ago. And I think they're still, I still hear stories that they're still doing this, that they have 6 or 7 email addresses. They're all something at gmail.com, right? That they still don't have their own domain, right? So there's a professionalism of it. The security of it is so much more secure to have your domain and email addresses tied into that than to have free emails that are easily duplicated, copied, and basically forged, if you will, right?
No, I agree. And I think that do you think it's because a lot of the larger tech companies out there, like the Googles of the world, they don't market to small businesses, and that's why people don't actually do that? Because, and then on top of it too, like just a basic antivirus software, like because again, phishing emails, hacking, all of that stuff is a real thing, but it's like that's like an extra, I think it's like $100 a year or something is what I pay for my Norton account. And I just look at it as it's like the infrastructure, like the infrastructure that brings to your organization is like, it's just second to none, because it's like, if you're going to go out, like whether people want this or not, the facts are the facts. We are in a very digital world. It's only going to continue to do that. So you need a digital presence. You need to go out there and claim that stuff right now, because if you don't, at this point, I think it's safe to say somebody else will, and they will try and impersonate you. And the easier you make it, the faster it could potentially put you out of business at this point.
You're exactly right, and that's what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, right? On steroids is this invasion of fraud, and part of the reasons why it's been so easy for fraudsters to pick out and attack the trucking industry, logistics industry, is because right now the security bars are so low that we are the low hanging fruit on the tree, and we're being treated like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Do you now? Obviously, you do a lot of work with the Broker Carrier Summit as well, and I know everything that Dan's doing over there, and the entire organization. It's not just Dan at this point anymore. There's a lot of people who are putting a lot of effort into building this up, and I see a lot of synergies between what they're doing at Broker Carrier Summit and what you guys are trying to do at Carrier Source and everything. And I think a lot of it is always going to boil down to trust, right? And I know it's such an easy term to throw out there, right? Like, oh, you got to have, just like relationships. You got to get relationships and everything else. Do you still think that the sentiment of trust between carriers and brokers is it lower than it ever has been, do you think?
I don't think it's lower than it's ever have been. I think it's a little bit higher than it was maybe 10 years ago. Maybe not 20 years ago, but meeting face to face again, right? Building those relationships, really talking about having consistent, if you're a broker, having consistent carrier base, right? And that is part of the, to have a successful business no matter what, you need a consistent carrier base, right? And then we have the fraud issues come in, which makes it even more imperative. You need a consistent carrier base to come in. So I think we're on the uptrend of broker carrier relations, right? And Dan's done a marvelous job over the Broker Carrier Summit to bring that together. And those are certainly my favorite industry conferences to go to. Those summits, because you have a lot of great carriers, a lot of great brokers coming in, a lot of business being done, a lot of relationships being formed, and those face-to-face relationships are imperative, right? I mean, they're so important for the growth of any business.
How are you guys going out there, and are you guys flagging fraudulent carriers and brokers alike on your guys' platform? Like if they're a carrier that has a brokerage arm, like how are you guys weeding them out? Because I think like that's one of those things that I see is, as you know, and that I've thought about too is again, I'm not blaming any company in particular, but I'm like, how are we allowing them to get on some of these systems to even pose that they're legitimate?
That's a really good question, and certainly on our platform, Carrier Source, we don't people who've had clients on double brokering, right, fraudulent carriers, and then the review aspect of that, right, leaving positive reviews, leaving negative reviews, is part of kind of that clearinghouse of going there to doing for for both parties, right? For all three parties, actually, brokers, carriers, and shippers, to go in and get reviews, right? So if you have 10 positive reviews as a carrier, right, I can feel pretty, I'm going to do my other parts of my due diligence, of course. Have a pretty good confidence level that this is good, right? If you have 10 negative reviews, right, I have a pretty good idea that this is not going to be a good experience, right? If you have part of those negative reviews or fraudulent accusations, then I'm going to have a lot of red flags up.
How do you guys separate the somebody just complaining and like an actual valid thing, right? And I mean, like, how do you not let somebody go out there and be like, oh, the driver didn't answer, or like I waited until pickup time and then I called them and then they found out that they weren't on, like they never got the rate con. Like it was clear the broker did not do their due diligence and they're just complaining. How do you guys separate that from an actual, like, this is what went on?
So number one, every review is moderated by a human, right? So a human looks at it. The company being reviewed has a chance to respond, and at the end of the day, it's kind of our process, right? Is that human moderation and sometimes a little bit of dispute resolution before it hits online, right? If it's something that is a miscommunication, if it's something that isn't that really a big deal, right? I think you see that in the Freight Guard report sometimes, where people are throwing out Freight Guard reports for things that are kind of minor, that kind of happen day to day. They're unfortunate. They're a thorn in everybody's side. But does it really escalate to the level of a Freight Guard report on somebody? Some of them are kind of petty.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And like, I don't use Carrier 411 and I haven't used Carrier 411 for quite some time now. But when I was using it, I would say 90% of the freight guards that were out there were complete broker failure to do their job. And then they're going out there and like ruining the reputation of a carrier in that moment, right? And I think like that's the big thing is I feel like there's so many tools that are out there right now, Kevin, but like, how do we protect the integrity of the trucking companies that are out there? Because I feel like a lot of those instances where they have no room to like even respond to some of these complaints, and it's not a fair shake, right? And again, I always like to say, you guys, I actually do this job, so I know that there's bad actors on every side of the industry, so I'm impartial. But one thing I will say is a lot of carriers and drivers out there have no ability to defend themselves at all. And then people will go to a carrier 411, for example, or other monitoring things, and they're like, their entire reputation's tarnished. And they're like, all because I didn't get sent a rate confirmation. Now my business is ruined. So it's like, that's the thing is it's like, as there is more and more of a digital presence that's out there, how do we protect the ones who seemingly feel voiceless at times?
It is, especially number one, you have to give both parties access to respond and to view, right? I mean, if a carrier gets a freight guard, how are they going to actually log in and see that freight guard report? Someone has to send them that freight guard report. There's, there is limited ways for them to respond, and I think you find there's a couple of companies out there that's what they do. That they specialize in defending carriers against freight guard reports, right? To clean those up, and that's another expense that comes in, where the carrier should be able to fairly defend themselves from any attacks like that. But yeah, you're exactly right. There's a lot of, when I was a broker, if they had a freight guard report, we couldn't use that carrier, right? And if it's part of the 90% that really aren't truly that serious of an issue, right? Then that really harms that carrier. And so yeah, there's going to be a fair public platform for that, but it's just very difficult to do, especially in this climate today where there's so much fraud just running rampant, and it's hard to really identify who's a legitimate carrier, who's not a legitimate carrier, who's a legitimate broker, who's not a legitimate broker, and a lot of the fraud that they're not really connected to anything. They are they're kind of this shadow band of characters that are just running wild.
Yeah. Now, have you guys seen a rise in maybe shippers coming on board and signing up for you guys to vet who's coming in and picking up their freight? Because I have a secret shipper audience that watches this show. They reach out to me on the side. I'll never out them. They're not for sale, nothing like that. But like a lot of what we discuss now on this show is like top of mind for all of these companies, because again, if their freight doesn't ship, they lose money. They potentially lose customers. And I think like that's a major disconnect, Kevin, that a lot of brokers and carriers think is like where they're picking up and delivering to, how they service that could have catastrophic consequences on that manufacturer of insert whatever goods that are out there. Have you guys seen that where shippers are now signing up where they're like, we have to do this? Because, again, there's been also a decent amount of shippers over these past 5 years that they've built up their own internal transportation team because they were sick of the service failures that were going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we have a huge shipper audience, and we have a free open website, right? So there's no need to sign in. There's nothing you really have to do. You can just go to Carrier Source and look up any carrier or freight brokerage and see what reviews they have, right? And that's the main way, right? Is to see the reviews, right? If they have 6 reviews, 10 reviews, or 20 reviews, using carriers or transportation providers that have been reviewed heavily is always a really good practice. I think in December we had 19,500 unique shippers that we identified that came to the website and for capacity. So in that way, it's a free open website, so you don't really even have to sign in to use Carrier Source, which is a great resource.
And on top of that, you guys released a very amazing tool called, it's like your shipper intent data that's out there. What was that kind of driving force behind that? And how does that work for your guys as users and potential users?
Yeah, so it's intent data, right? There's no better intent than shippers coming on to Carrier Source, searching for lanes, searching for modes, searching for carriers or capacity, right? That you're not doing that instead of watching ESPN during the day. So you are are in there, you're in the market, you're searching, you're having problems with the lane, maybe you're doing a bid, maybe you're doing a project, you are, something is coming up very soon. So that's an intent signal that we can supply to brokers and carriers to, help in their prospecting game, right? Be in the right place at the right time cuts down on those cold calls that we are talking about right before we hit live, right? It focuses those prospecting and business development activities, right? Gives you a bigger bang for your dollar, higher ROI, less sales activity to create opportunities, and that's what we're all looking for in business.
Do you think that that is a tool that is now available? Because like obviously you've been in this industry for a long time, Kevin. You've been on the brokerage side of things. You got Brush Pass, you got a bunch of experiences. Now, do you think like this shipper intent data, this is a new tool that has never really kind of been a thing, and this is something that people need to like heavily look into inside of their organization? Because like I guess the difference between me and a lot of people who have shows, I actually cold call shippers every single day. I'm out there actively prospecting, and getting that leg up right now is like few and far between, because the greatest enemy to your business development efforts is everybody's good enough right now.
Everybody's good enough. So if you think about the cold calls that you do, right, and you're lucky to get 50 cold calls a day, probably out, right, and you just have to hope that there's a need, an urgent need with any of those 50 cold calls, let's say, right, and it's you can't predict it. You just have to call more people. It becomes just a straight numbers game. If you use an intent data, you're only calling people that have a high probability of having a need right now. So if you're fishing from a stocked pond, is basically what it is, right? Those 50 calls are 50 people who are on carrier sorts over the last couple of days searching for a lane, equipment type. You have a very high confidence level that they are in the market right now. Then you're calling 50 people with need. And what's that going to do? Your ratio, your odds just go parabolic after that.
Yeah, that's a tool that I can say with confidence has not been at people's disposal here. And that's just another thing where, again, obviously everything's got a cost and a price, but I look at it it's like, where are you investing your money in your business, right? Like everybody has the same finite amount of not the same finite amount of resources, but everybody has a set dollar amount that they can invest in. And it's like, if I'm going out there and I'm looking at where is my business right now, what is the greatest threat to my business personally at my company is always going to, for where we are, we need to add more shippers at the end of the day. That's where we need to do. That is our sole focus. There is nothing anybody can say out there right now that is going to teach me anything I don't already know about that, right? Like I got to add shippers. Now there's tech and tools at our disposal that weren't there a couple of years ago, where you can become even more hyper focused in on what you're going after. And I think like that is going to, as the market continues to perform the way that it is, you got to find ways to stand out in the crowd. And if there's a way for you to go in there and be like, not, hey, I checked your search history, but like, hey, blah, 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 this is what we do. Like you can get even more hyper focused in with your outreach.
Yeah, you can, if you find a shipper that's searching today for Appleton, Wisconsin to Detroit, Michigan, right? They're searching that lane that they certainly have a need, right? We have some good AI research tools that can pop in and kind of probably reason why they're searching for that lane, where their customers are, their vendors are, their facilities are, and it gives you the intel to really have a very credible conversation with that shipper. That's a highly productive call, right? Highly productive if you can get a hold of them, right? It's always the main thing is getting hold of people. But however you get a hold of them, whether it's email or phone or a combination of all of that, then your chances, your odds just increase. And that's what we all want. We want to do less sales activities and create more opportunities, right? and that's where you can really expand your pipeline, right? Fill in that pipeline, add new shippers in your pipeline, and as long as you have a large pipeline, you can make a lot of other mistakes and still be okay, right? If you don't have a pipeline, it's hard to survive some mistakes, right? But if you have a big pipeline, you can survive almost anything.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is probably outside of cash flow constraints, that is probably the largest issue for not just freight companies, but like 90% of the businesses that are out there is there is no sales process. There is no pipeline. And they, because again, most people, when they become fat and happy, they stop prospecting, they stop selling, or there's one sign of an adverse market. They stop, oh, nobody's adding anybody right now, we shouldn't sell. You just don't automatically start and stop. It's not like riding a bike, right? So it's like you got to go out there and you got to stay constant. You got to stay present in front of all these people, because if you don't, trust me, you guys, I am. All right. I'm not saying this to brag. I am prospecting every single day of the work week that's out there. But Kevin, thank you so much for your time on everything, man. It's always great having you on. I feel like these shows always fly by when you're on, man. How does anybody reach out to you guys, though, to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or cahill@carriersource.io. Either one. More than happy to send you some information, send you a demo, and yeah, So it's a great tool. I love it, man. Shipper intent data.
Perfect. Kevin, thank you so much. If you guys can't find Kevin or Carrier Source out there, you guys know, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with them. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang.